You, in the morning when you heard this news, seemed to suggest to me that it was a terrible, terrible way of actually trying to find a vaccine. Why do you say that?
So, Rajdeep, there are four aspects to this. One is, of course, the urgency of the vaccine. No one can dispute that. And India, in some ways, may have to develop its own vaccine. Because even if someone else develops a vaccine, we may be last in line. And therefore, it makes sense to have an indigenous vaccine. The second is this particular vaccine candidate. It's actually not a bad candidate. And in fact, all the companies, Krishna Allah and Bharat Biotech, actually have experience with developing an indigenous vaccine. They did that with the rotavirus vaccine, but that took, probably 15 years in their process. It took about 30 plus years, right from when the strain was found to when we had a vaccine. So that's the typical timeline of vaccine development. So it's not like the vaccine candidate is bad. The third thing is really around process. What was disturbing about this was that somehow we thought that you can actually be sure that you have a vaccine in 45 days from now. Vaccines don't operate on our timelines. It really is a function of science. Most vaccines fail, and that is just the truth of the matter. If you line up all the vaccines that have ever been developed, most vaccines, over 90% of vaccines will fail. Probably more than like 98% of vaccines will fail, which is why David Nabarro is right. It's not because of lack of effort or lack of money or lack of intent. It is just that vaccine development is a very hard business. And therefore, you cannot determine an endpoint to say that I will have a vaccine by this particular point in time. It's really going to be a function of how long it takes. And the last point is really around safety. Now, most vaccines, like childhood vaccines, we give these only to 26 million children, 2.6 crores every year. So it's like a small number. This particular vaccine, again, like David said, has to be given to the entire population. So the vaccine has to be safe for children, it has to be safe for adults, it has to be safe for the elderly. So the bar for this vaccine is much higher than even a regular vaccine which is just for children, where you're testing it only on one age group. So for all of these reasons, these all add to the time that it takes to develop a vaccine, which is why I would agree it will take, at least 2 years, and probably a year and a half to 2 years, and then there's a question of scaling up production. And I think we should calibrate our expectations to that timeline.
Let me ask you, Anand Bhan, what is it about this ICMR letter that troubles you? Is it the threatening tone in it, the manner in which it says you have to start the trials by a particular date, by almost eliminating the various stages that are required, that it sets this deadline? Or what is it about this that troubles you so much? The fact that results are assumed to be a success?
Thank you. So I think there are a few elements in the ICMR letter which is a bit surprising. One is that there is an assumption that they will be able to finish phase 1, phase 2 studies as well as efficacy studies by the 15th August and have results to announce on the 15th of August, which is highly unlikely and also is a time frame which looks very, very ambitious and unlike anything we've seen for vaccine research or indeed for clinical trials earlier. The second element is that given that this is a research on vaccines, a novel vaccine candidate for a novel disease, which is COVID-19, you would want to ensure that due processes and standards are followed in terms of your protocol, in terms of ensuring safety and efficacy is given enough attention. And the time frame that is being lined up makes it extremely difficult to do it. This is a study which seems to be planned to be done nationally across many sites, and it does require time for both the institution as well as their own committees like the ethics committee of that institution to look at the protocol, to look at the data closely, for us to do an analysis at the end of each phase before deciding if we want to proceed to other phases. And all of that typically does take a fair amount of time. So to expect all of that to be done and be ready for the results to be shared in the public domain in just over a month is highly surprising. So I think that's where it does raise a bit of red flags, and it's unclear why such a letter has been issued and why such aggressive timeline has been chosen, and what protections are in place to prevent the possibility of any risk happening.
Hello everyone, this is Rahul Kamal here. Hope you enjoyed this video. For the latest news and analysis, like and subscribe the India Today YouTube channel, and don't forget to press the bell icon to stay updated.